You've always imagined it would be a fade to black, a quiet exit, like a candle flickering out in a dark room or a computer being unplugged. We have been taught that death is a slow dimming of the lights, a gradual descent into a silence where the self simply ceases to be. But in 2016, we caught a glimpse of the truth by accident, and it changed everything. Instead of a blackout, we saw a surge. Instead of a silence, we saw a symphony. The data suggests that death isn't the lights going out. It's the brain turning them all on at once for one final, frantic performance. For decades, the moment of death was a biological black box. We knew what happened to the heart, the lungs and the blood, but the mind remained a mystery because you cannot ethically monitor a dying human brain in high resolution. But that year, an 87-year-old patient with epilepsy was hooked up to a continuous electroencephalogram, or EEG. The doctors were trying to map his seizures. While the machine was running, the patient suffered a sudden, massive heart attack and died. This was the first time in history that we recorded the exact neural fingerprint of a human being as they crossed the border between life and whatever comes next. When the researchers, led by Dr. Ajmal Zemar, looked at the recording later, they didn't see the slow, jagged decline of a failing machine. They saw something that looked like the brain was waking up. In the 30 seconds before and after the heart stopped beating, the monitor didn't go flat. It exploded with high-frequency electrical activity called gamma oscillations. These are the fastest and most organized waves the brain can produce. They are the binding waves, the signals the brain uses when it is doing its most intense work. We see them when you are in deep meditation, when you are dreaming, and when you are undergoing a high-level cognitive task like retrieving a complex memory. To see these waves at the moment of death is a physiological paradox. The heart has stopped. Oxygen is no longer flowing to the skull. By all the rules of biology, the brain should be shutting down its expensive systems to save energy. Instead, it is performing a high-energy, final dance. It is as if the mind, realizing the power is about to be cut, decides to play every record in its collection at once. We used to think that the life review, the famous "my life flashed before my eyes" phenomenon, was just a spiritual myth or a psychological trick. But the presence of these gamma waves suggests there is a physical mechanism for it. The brain is entering a state of hypersynchrony, where different regions are communicating with a level of intensity that we rarely see in our daily lives. In those final 30 seconds, your brain might be performing a massive, high-speed data compression, replaying the highlights of your existence in a vivid, internal theater that no one else can see. This isn't just a human fluke. We see this same surge across the animal kingdom. In 2013, researchers at the University of Michigan, led by Dr. Jimo Borjigin, performed a similar experiment on rats. They induced cardiac arrest while monitoring the rat's brain activity. They expected to see a quick drop to zero. Instead, they saw a 300% increase in high-frequency brain activity in the 30 seconds after the heart stopped. The dying rats were technically more conscious and more aware than they were when they were fully awake and running through mazes. This suggests that the final surge is a fundamental feature of the mammalian brain. It is a preloaded exit program that we all share. But it also raises a terrifying question. Why? Why would evolution spend so much energy on a performance that the rest of the body will never benefit from? Why have a memory recap when there is no future to apply those lessons to? One possibility is that the surge isn't a gift, but a massive biological short circuit. To understand this, you have to look at the physics of a neuron. Your brain is an electrical grid, and like any grid, it requires constant maintenance to keep the charges in the right places. Neurons use a vast amount of energy just to keep gates closed, holding back a flood of ions and neurotransmitters. When the heart stops and the oxygen runs out, the brain loses the ability to power those gates. They all fail at once. This leads to what scientists call a glutamate storm. Glutamate is the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter. It's the go signal. When the gates break, the brain is flooded with a final massive dump of this chemical. Every neuron in your head fires simultaneously in a desperate, uncoordinated burst. This firestorm might be what creates the feeling of an overwhelming white light, or a sense of being everywhere at once. The life review might just be the accidental byproduct of every memory circuit being triggered at the same time as the system crashes. But there is a different piece of evidence that suggests there is something more organized happening. It's a phenomenon called terminal lucidity. Doctors and nurses in hospice wards have documented this for centuries. It happens to patients with severe, late-stage dementia or Alzheimer's, people whose brains have been so physically ravaged by disease that they haven't spoken or recognized their own children in years. Suddenly, hours or even minutes before death, they wake up. They become 100% clear. They remember names, they recount stories from decades ago, and they say goodbye with a level of focus that should be physically impossible, given the state of their brain tissue. This final flare of the self is the human version of the gamma surge. It suggests that even in a broken brain, the person is still there, waiting for one last surge of energy to push through the static before the line goes dead. If the brain can become hyperactive after the heart stops, it forces us to reconsider our entire definition of the end. In the medical world, time of death is usually recorded when the heart stops. But if the brain is still performing a vivid, internal symphony for several minutes after that, is the person really gone? We are learning that death isn't a single point on a map. It's a transition period, a grey zone where the body is dead, but the mind is in its most intense state of being. This brings us to the most haunting part of the data, the question of time. We know that the brain's perception of time is flexible. When you are in a car accident or a high-stress situation, your brain's processing speed spikes, and the world seems to move in slow motion. This is because the brain is recording more data per second than usual. If the gamma surge at death is a 300% increase in activity, and if every memory circuit is firing at once, what does that feel like from the inside? To a doctor standing in the room, it's just 30 seconds of jagged lines on a monitor. But to the mind experiencing it, those 30 seconds might feel like an eternity. The brain could be compressing 100 years of experience into a few final breaths. It could be creating a subjective forever in the gap between the last heartbeat and the last thought. There is a theory in physics and philosophy that our lives aren't a linear timeline, but a block universe, where every moment exists simultaneously. If the brain's final act is to synchronize all those moments into one final surge, then the life review isn't just a movie you are watching, it's a place you are going. You aren't remembering your life, you are inhabiting it one last time with a level of clarity that you never had while you were distracted by the business of living. This reveals a profound irony about our existence. We spend our entire lives afraid of the moment the lights go out, worrying about the darkness that follows. But the evidence suggests that the end is actually the brightest moment we will ever experience. It is the only time our entire brain works in perfect, synchronized harmony. It is the ultimate aha moment, the final data dump where the story finally makes sense. But if the surge is real, it also leaves us with a question that is harder to dismiss than the fear of death itself. If your brain can compress a lifetime into 30 seconds, and if it can create a vivid, internal reality that feels as real as the room you are sitting in right now, how do you know you aren't in those 30 seconds right now? How do you know that the life you are living isn't actually the final recap? How do you know that the now you are experiencing isn't just the final, brilliant echo of a life that has already ended? The monitor in that hospital room in 2016 didn't show us a blackout. It showed us a flicker of a forever that we are all carrying inside our skulls. We are all walking around with a preloaded exit program, a final performance that is waiting for its cue. We aren't just biological machines waiting to be unplugged, we are symphonies waiting for the final movement. Death isn't the enemy of the mind, it's the mind's final, most intense creation. It is the moment where the self finally realizes what it was the whole time. And, as the electrical firestorm of the Glutamate Storm finally fades, and the gamma waves settle into a long, quiet hum, the last thing we experience might not be a loss at all. It might be a completion. The lights didn't go out because the room was empty. They went out because the show was over. And as you realize that your own brain is already holding the script for that final performance, the fear of the fade to black starts to look like a misunderstanding. You aren't heading toward a silence. You are heading toward the loudest, brightest, and most vivid 30 seconds you have ever known. The surge is coming for all of us, and when it does, the only thing that will matter is the story that the brain decides to play back. We are the creators of our own final forever. And perhaps that is the ultimate biological mercy, that in the end, we don't just die, we become the memory of everything we ever were, all at once, before we finally let go of the wire.